Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of the Hangover, somewhat of a pre-Christmas edition. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Shannon White. Shannon, how you doing, my man?
Ho, ho, ho. It's Santa Shannon.
There
And
you
I
go.
wanted to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. This is Christmas week. It's wonderful. It looks like Christmas here. We got snow and it's cold, 50 some mile an hour winds. And it's just, it makes it feel like the holiday time. And I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
100%, 100%. And wow, what better of a way to start this Christmas week than getting the news that Rudolph is possibly going to save Christmas. If you guys haven't heard, earlier today, Mike Tomlin in his press conference announced that, if Kenny Pickett can't go this weekend, which, based on his confidence of how Mason Rudolph is going to start, probably is going to be Mason Rudolph, but he is looking that he's going to be the starting quarterback this weekend, this Saturday, as the Steelers take on the Cincinnati Bengals. What was your knee-jerk reaction to hearing the news? Were you expecting it? Did it surprise you? What are your thoughts, Shannon, on Mason Rudolph?
I called for it 2 weeks ago. I knew what we had in Mitch in this offense, and I was just like, they still had a chance to make the playoffs, and I was just like, now's the time to give Rudolph a chance because, again, he throws a really good deep ball, and Pickens needs somebody to get him the ball deep when he gets one-on-one coverage. And, Trubisky does not throw a good deep ball. He either hangs it up or he overthrows it. And also, Rudolph he's better at play action and hitting, across the middle, which is something the Steelers have finally started to do a little bit with the tight ends. So I think it's a little too late. I wish they'd have done it earlier. Because I think that they've had some winnable games, but Mitch is just, I love Trubisky, the man, but the player is a turnover machine. I mean, if he makes a good play, you just wait a couple plays later, he's going to make a bonehead play. And that's just who he is. And it's what he done in these last couple of games. So I'm happy for Rudolph. I think he deserves a chance in this circus of a season to get in there and show what he can do, to work with the ones at practice. And, the way the season looks, it looks like a lost season. I wouldn't even try to rush Pickett back. Make sure that is healed because, he did have the surgery as well. And if Rudolph can pull out a victory, see what he can do. Because right now, we talked about earlier, I wanted the title of the show, 3 games to go. What's left to play for? So I am happy, though, that they're finally giving Rudolph a chance to see if he can work some kind of magic and at least get Pickens more involved.
I agree with everything that you said. And for Mike Tomlin, he talks a lot about football justice. I think that if this goes well for Rudolph, even if it's just 1 or 2 showings and he ends up moving on from the Pittsburgh Steelers and gets an opportunity somewhere else in the offseason, I think that there is no other, means of football justice than Mason Rudolph to go out there and to perform well and perform at a starting quality quarterback. I think that he was never really given a fair chance. When he was drafted, Ben threw some shade at him. I think that a lot of the fan base probably echoed some of the same frustrations as Ben with, drafting a quarterback in the 3rd round. But that wasn't his fault that he was brought into that situation. He's had 11 starts. So he's had less than half the starts that Kenny Pickett has had. And in that time, he's had 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. So he's put the ball in the other team's hands a couple of times, but he really has been somebody who's protected the ball, unlike Mitch Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky's throwing interceptions like crazy. I can't stand Mitch Trubisky's throwing motion. That throwing off the back foot drives me insane, which is why he's always inaccurate, in my opinion. And sometimes it just looks like he's just throwing it up just to throw it up in a direction in hopes that somebody's going to come up with the ball. And, half the time it's the other team. So You know, I'm glad that Rudolph is getting a chance. You know, this team is still 7-7. There's still 3 games to go. Uh, it's going to be daunting, though. You know, I think that it might be a little too late. Some other news that broke out today was that DeMonte KZ was going to be suspended for the rest of the season. That's huge. Minkah Fitzpatrick has already been ruled out. Safety position, along with the middle linebacker position, has been completely just devastated this entire season.
Mm-hmm.
You see any hope in this defense moving forward?
It's funny, the early part of the season, we talked a lot about the good fortune. The Steelers just kept getting fortunate and winning games. The problem is that it usually catches up with you. If you have a real good fortune, usually you're going to it's going to equal out. And man, since that midway point, things were looking good. They were 6-3, and then you lose both inside linebackers, you lose both safeties. Uh, you're the ball's not bouncing your way. The ball was on the ground 4 times against the Cardinals. They could have recovered it. It'd been a game changing play, and they never could recover it.
Mhm.
It just it happens, and um, the defense is just it's a wreck now. I mean, it really is. The They were just abused up the middle by the Colts. I mean, Colts could get 5-6 yards every run, right up the gut. And you know, I talked about Cam Hayward, how he struggled at his age to come back from that core surgery,
Mhm.
and that's understandable. But that he's lost his burst, his explosiveness, but he was still doing good against the run. Well, he got pushed around bad Saturday, and the whole line did. They really did. And so when you play all that soft zone, and you're giving up all them easy completions, and you can't stop the run, and you can't score on offense. I mean, nothing's looking up for this team right now. So um, it's if you're going to have a lot of bad luck, just get it out of the way all at the same time, and maybe it won't follow you into next year.
Yeah. And you're right, though. You know, there was a lot of good fortune. I think Steelers Freak brought it up. You know, the Steelers won with a lot of luck and some splash turnover plays. Those things and those players that were creating those type of plays aren't in, and the luck has ran out. And so we're getting now the results of that. You know, how concerned are you with Minkah Fitzpatrick? To me, Tomlin came out right off the bat saying he's out. He's not going to play in this game, and he doesn't know anything further. He's going to wait for the doctors, wait for MRIs and stuff like that. You know that kind of tells me that the preliminary thing is probably not that good. You know, what are your thoughts on that? And Minkah Fitzpatrick probably being gone for a couple of weeks, if not the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's my concern. Is it looked like he was in a lot of discomfort. He already trying to come back from the groin, broke hand, playing with a cast on his hand, ineffective, being used out of position, uh, trying to cover for all their weaknesses now at middle linebacker and safety. Um, and if it's a lost season, like I say, if they lose Saturday, I've already said this season's done. But I know there's some people that are still holding out hope for a miracle. If they lose this Saturday, you can quit hope for a miracle. So he's going to miss this week for sure. If the Steelers lose this week, shut him down. You got too much invested in him. Let him recover. Give the young guys some playing time. See what Thompson can do and some of these other young guys you got there. And, start preparing for the future.
Yeah, I agree. It's not worth, you know, prolonging an injury or making it something that's going to affect next season or the beginning of next season. You know, on a season this year that, yeah, it's not looking good. It's just not going to be the Steelers' year, even if they somehow back into the playoffs, because, the teams that are remaining, they do kind of play each other to a certain extent. You know, you have the Colts that are ahead of the Steelers. Steelers need to, basically have them lose 2 games. They play Atlanta, Raiders, and then Texans. Texans is another team that we need to lose a couple of games as well. And they're playing the Colts, Titans, and Browns, not in that order. That's actually the reverse order of who they play. They're playing the Browns first, Titans, and then the Colts. And the Browns, they're 2 games ahead of the Steelers, so they need to lose 2 games. And Bengals, I think if the Steelers just win this game, that basically kills the Bengals' chances as well. But the Bengals, they play the Chiefs, the Browns, as well this later this year. So the Browns, the Bengals play each other, Texans and Colts play each other. I think that there's a chance there, that the Steelers can back their way into a seventh seed. But even if they do, I don't think they're going to go anywhere. I think it's going to be embarrassing, if anything.
Was watching the game, and I wrote about it in my last article. The Steelers kept talking about we're in playoff mode now. This week against the Colts was playoff mode. And I was like, oh no. Because all I think about Steelers under Mike Tomlin in the playoffs in the last, when they have made it 3 times since 2018, they're never prepared. They come out and they get stomped right from the beginning. And I was like, oh God, I don't want it to be playoff mindset. Well, they got ahead 13-0. Now it was fluky, but they got ahead. And I said, well, maybe they are in the right mindset. Rest of the game, typical playoff atmosphere. I mean, they just, and I don't know if let's go back to even the second half of 2020. Every week has the same feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Even the week they had the 400 yards against the Bengals last time in Cincinnati, they was good because they could possess the ball and moved it effectively all 4 quarters. They still couldn't score, but it just has the same feel. It's like the same game plan on offense and defense. We're going to come out, we're going to do it our way, and we're going to pray it works. I mean, you watch these other teams, they have injuries. Everybody blames it on the injuries. The Colts had no starting running back of it. Even their, because Moss got knocked out early. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter who the running back was. They was just gashing the Steelers. Other teams make adjustments to fit the personnel they do have available. Steelers don't do that. This is what we're going to do, and we throw people in there and hope they can do it. And, I mean, it's just obvious now that so much of this problem is beyond a lack of talent, especially now with all the injuries. But there's also a lack of coaching from a player development perspective, a teaching perspective, and making in-game adjustments. We're just not seeing it. And, once you let a team like the Colts got in that rhythm, and Minshew was throwing to the one guy, I never even heard of him, and he kept making big catches. He dropped the one touchdown, and they come right back and hit him for another one. So, I mean, where the Steelers have mismatches, like when Levi Wallace is on the field, it's a mismatch.
Mm-hmm.
And teams find it. Mark Robertson was caught out there in pass coverage. Mismatch. They found it. You see what I'm saying? If they see when the Steelers had to bring in backups, they're not prepared. And the other team identifies the backup and the potential weakness, and they attack it, and they punish the Steelers. The Steelers run the same play, regardless if it's starters or backups in there. So it's all kind of culminating and come to a head at the same time, which I think honestly had to happen if we're ever going to have meaningful change, the necessary changes that have to be made within the organization.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that's why, like, when many times what I've noticed is when the Steelers, if the opposite quarterback goes down, like if the starting quarterback goes down, the Steelers struggle with the backup because they assume that the backup quarterback is going to do the same thing, or they're going to have the same game plan as a starting quarterback, and not realizing that maybe perhaps, or not, they don't do what the opposite team does, which is adjust for that quarterback's weaknesses and strengths. And that's how they play their own game as well. Whether it's, if Ben went down, later, a few years back, and Mason had to go into the game, they gave him Ben's playbook. They didn't change it. They didn't move it around or any of those type of things. So, I see that. And I see that being a coaching issue, an inability to adapt and change in a world where everything changes, and you need to adapt if you want to be successful. And by he, I mean, Coach Tomlin is just this old school mindset that I think has gotten stale. And we can kind of see that on the field, when you're seeing a George Pickens not finish a block that ends up resulting in a tackle of Jalen Warren before he gets to the end zone,
Exactly.
or even worse, when you have him near a cornerback that just intercepted the ball that, although wasn't his fault, it went way over his head, and he runs behind him and then just runs off the field and
Yeah.
allows Deontay Johnson to tackle him. That's an attitude issue. An attitude is a reflection of leadership, and he's the guy at the top. And right now, I think that more than any other time, he's really in danger of possibly not being the coach, after this season. You're having Matt Canada's gone, so you're already replacing your offensive coordinator. Your defensive coordinator doesn't sound like he's going to be coming back when you have Tomlin talk about the adjustment issues mid-game or during game that the defense wasn't able to have. So he's already seen, and I think he finally came to terms, or at least it appeared he came to terms today, about the coaching staff and their ability to change or adjust, and that they're playing losing football. And when you come to that realization, I think he's going to have to get rid of Austin, Terrell Austin. You had a situation that didn't look very good. I can't remember the team, but Minkah Fitzpatrick there was pictures and videos of him and Austin kind of getting into it with each other because he wanted Minkah, that is, wanted the defense to be ran a certain way. And they did, and it ended up working out for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
That was against the Titans, yes.
Oh, Titans, yeah. And so, yeah, there you go, the Titans. So those things are happening. There's chaos. You have Deontay Johnson just after Mike Tomlin comes out and says, no, we're not taking teams lightly. Deontay Johnson comes back, doubles down on it, and says, oh, we've been doing it all week, taking them lightly. And this was against, I think, the Cardinals. So I think it's time for change. I really do. Do you foresee that actually being a possibility, or do you think that, no, it's going to be status quo, Tomlin's going to stay, he's going to pick his staff? And if Tomlin has to stay, or if Tomlin does stay, do you think they have to give him an extension so that way he can bring in a good staff?
Well, one thing I want to say is, you have pre-snap penalties, or you have to waste the timeout, and that's happened all year long. That's bad coaching. That's not being prepared. Last game, there was 2 plays in the game. They had 10 defenders. And people showing clips of it. 10 defenders. It's hard enough they can't stop people with 11. You definitely don't want to be short-handed.
Yeah.
At this point in the season, unacceptable. One reason is they have the smallest coaching staff in the NFL. A lot of offensive, defensive coordinators have assistants, have people that, you got to be out there, you got to be off. Steelers don't have that. Not only they have the cheapest coach staff, they got the smallest. That's got to change. Tomlin is the same guy now that he was when they hired him. He has his strengths and he has his weaknesses. His strengths he's great at, but his weaknesses, he's not a strategist. He has to rely on his offensive, especially his offensive coordinator. Now, defensive, Tomlin's a very good defensive-minded coach. But I think sometimes that causes him to, I'll take a guy like Austin, because I'm basically going to be the defensive coordinator, and he'll listen to me. You get a certain type of coach in there, that's not going to work. So I think that I think Tomlin will be back, at least to work out, the rest of his contract. I would, if they want to keep him, he has to understand that they are going to hire the coaches. There needs to be massive change to this coaching staff. Not just offensive defense coordinator, but positional coaches. And then if Tomlin agrees and he understands this is a 2 or 3 year rebuild, then you have to extend him. You have to. But, because I think Tomlin is a good talent evaluator. I think he's really good in the draft lead-up process, going to dinners with the players and getting to know the players. And I think he builds relationships that way. That's why a lot of guys want to play for him later when they're free agents. But I trust Omar Khan, Andy Weidel, the new scouting department to get this right. I think they had a very strong draft. not everything they did in the offseason's panned out. Keanu Neal, not trying to get Edwards back and getting Neal. I knew that was a bad idea. I knew Neal couldn't cover nobody. He's too slow to be a full-time strong safety. So they've had to get creative trying to use him. Everything they did was just put it all on Minkah. And now you got Minkah, who's a first-round All-Pro, playing like a fourth-round, guy trying to hang on in the NFL. That's the kind of role they have them doing. The junkyard dog role. Minkah's doing everything instead of being what he's great at, a ball hawk. So, but I trust Khan and Waddle. But there's going to have to be, if Tomlin does come back, there's got to be an understanding that coaching staff needs revamped.
Do you think week 1 of next year, Tomlin is back and Kenny Pickett is the week 1 starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Well, I said it today in a comment. I think that right now, the Steelers really don't know what they have, good or bad, in Kenny Pickett.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it don't look good because he's not had a breakout game at any point, even a breakout quarter where, maybe he got hot and had 2 touchdowns. We haven't seen that. So they really don't know what they got. They do know they have a bad offense. I think that what they got to do is fully accept the rebuild. And that means rebuild both foundations. Offensive line got to change. It ain't working. Second worst, they say they're the second worst pass blocking offensive line in the NFL. I say it's probably the first, but we'll say second. That is not panned out this year. Run blocking is starting to struggle because they can't pass block. So Meyer has to go. You're going to have to change this up. You're going to have to draft some more talent there and another free agent. Same thing on the defensive line. Hayward's getting old. Ogunjobi is not as effective. He got paid. Adams is not the answer. They got Keanu Benton. It was a good pick, but they need more. They need all 3 levels. They need a new inside linebacker, a younger guy to build around, and they got to get faster and younger in the secondary. So build the team, bring in a veteran competition for Pickett. Build the team. Have the team ready. Then get your quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Like you look at the Browns. Joe Flacco's the same Joe Flacco he was with the Jets. And he was with whoever else he played for after the Ravens. But they have a team. They have a team around him. So you're bringing him in, and he's still winning because they got a really good team.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to bring in a quarterback and put him behind a bad offensive line and get him killed. Look at Young for the Panthers this year. And then look at the difference with Stroud. Stroud's got a good offensive line, a running game, good receivers, good coaching. They're much improved because they had the team first and then they brought him in. Trading Watson, they got all the good picks. So, the Browns helped the Texans be the Texans this year. So, but all I'm saying is, I think it'll be Pickett to start next year, unless they bring in a veteran. He outplays Pickett, but they're going to be a totally new offense, a new offensive coordinator. So Pickett's got to earn that. If not, whoever they bring in to compete against him will.
I agree, and I think they're going to bring in somebody that is going to compete with Pickett. My thing is, I think that there is a pretty strong chance that it may not be Pickett as a starting quarterback. I feel that if you bring in an offensive coordinator, if you're going to want somebody who's worth anything, you have to make the job attractive, right? And what makes a job attractive for an offensive coordinator or an offensive-minded guy is the possibility for that job to springboard them into a head coaching job. So it's important of who you have as a coach and who you have as your quarterback going into that type of job. And I feel that if you have the combination of Mike Tomlin and Kenny Pickett, you're probably not going to get an offensive coordinator who's worthy or worth anything or something that's different than the yes men that Mike Tomlin has gotten up until this point. And, I think that the only way is, if the Rooney say, hey, we're going to take control over this, We're going to bring in this offensive coordinator, and behind the doors, tell him like, hey, Pickett is Tomlin's guy. Tomlin's going to stay here a year. You're going to try to develop him to the best of your ability. If it doesn't work out, maybe next year you'll be the head coach, and you can choose whoever you want to come in. But I don't know if that's something that you want going into the season, like that possibility. I mean, I don't know. I think that can question some, where a person's morals are if they have the opportunity to be the head coach of the team if the team doesn't succeed. You know what I mean?
Well, I think if the Steelers don't extend Tomlin,
Yeah.
that means he's playing it out the one more year.
Right.
So whoever you bring in, if he's a highly sought after offensive coordinator, he will want the job in Pittsburgh because he would be in line to be the next head coach, and he would be under that understanding when he come to Pittsburgh, because there is no job security in the sports world like being the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you're the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers till you die or you decide to step away. So it would not shock me if Tomlin doesn't do an extension, but he comes out, plays out that contract, and try to go out with a winning season next year. And they bring in a highly sought after young offensive coordinator, maybe a Brian Greasy or somebody like that. And then with the understanding, as you said, that you will be the head coach, after Tomlin steps down, and that we will, if Pickett isn't the answer, we will get you your starting quarterback. But that would give them time to build both foundations and get this team right. Because right now, it's not close.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing is, to get that quarterback, you're either going to have to spend a lot of money or spend a lot of capital, in the draft, or be really, really bad. And right now, the Steelers, if they end up not winning another game and they go 7-10, can you really risk not getting a quarterback in that situation by risking not being that bad again?
I think you have to be willing to do what is necessary. And that means that there's really nobody untouchable on your roster. Mm-hmm. If you look at teams that have rebuilt and reloaded quickly, they've moved some guys that people's like, I can't believe they traded him. But they got a bunch of picks and where they can actually replenish the roster. What you're willing to give up. If it's, it usually doesn't work trading 2 or 3 first round picks to trade up and get a guy, because then you're putting an immense amount of pressure on your franchise that you can't miss. Because if you miss, you set yourself back 5-10 years. But the modern NFL, you got to take some risk. And Colbert refused to. But I do believe that this new regime will. But I do believe that they will give Pickett one more chance with a veteran, waiting. You see these teams that have had injuries but have been able to remain some successful is because they have somebody competent in number 2.
Right.
I believe the Steelers thought they had that in Mitch Trubisky. Because I think the Steelers, Daniel, thought they could do what they did last year in the second half of the season, that they was going to be able to run the ball and that the quarterback would actually take a natural progression and get a little better than he was last year. And they would be able to win that way. But, I mean, it's just been – the defense is just not been there. They've been opportunistic, but they haven't they're on the field a lot. They give up a lot of big plays. I think they're like near the bottom in 3rd and long conversions. They allow way too many 3rd and longs, and they don't blitz. It's 4-man pass rush, and if Watt and Highsmith don't get there, this secondary is nowhere near good enough to hold up very long. And they're just giving wide open, completion, especially in the middle of the field, since both Holcomb and Alexander went down. So there's been a lot of factors. It's just not one thing. If they were a quarterback away, I'd say, yeah, you got to go for your quarterback this year because I think they might finish 7-10. I really do.
Yeah.
But I would say go for it. The problem is they got so many other needs. And I'd rather see them build the roster and then get the quarterback.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I think that you do have to build the roster and get the quarterback. My thing is that, you're going to be, if you end up going 7-10, the last time the Steelers lost 10 games, they ended up getting Ben Roethlisberger.
Yep.
So you're in position. I think that was the last time they were in position to get a quarterback that high as well. And so,
Was
you're
that
going to
at
be
number 10 or number 12? I can't remember.
what do you mean?
What pick was Ben?
11.
11.
Yeah, he was just
Well,
outside.
I mean,
of
if
the
they
top
could
10.
get in that range and the right guy falls, maybe.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I would rather them not do it in that order. But as you say, if you're sitting there at 10, 11, 12, and a guy, because there's going to be like 5 guys, maybe even 6, in this draft that could go in the first round. Let's say Bo Nix falls there, and you love Bo Nix. Or, everybody likes the Daniels kid. I don't think he'll make it that far. But let's say he's there. You can't pass that up.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're going to be going into the following season. You're hoping that you can pull in some pieces in the free agency. You're hoping you can probably pull in a young middle linebacker, maybe in the second round. You mentioned bringing in, I think they need to probably hit the strong safety also in the draft and another cornerback. You're probably looking at a right tackle and moving Broderick to the left side too. But that can possibly be some kind of free agent as well. But you're going into next year, if the Steelers run or lose the table all the way through, they're going to have a 4th place schedule. The strength of the schedule is not going to be that strong. You're going to have some developmental players and some youth there that can take advantage of the strength of the schedule. And I mean, I think I would like that move, me personally, if the Steelers end up 7-10.
Yeah. Like you said, you don't plan on being there a lot. So, and that way you don't have to give up the farm to get up there. But, we've talked a little bit. They've got 17, I think it is, guys coming up in free agency because they had a lot of 1-year rentals this year.
Mm-hmm.
So this team is going to look different. It's going, regardless whether they want it or not, it's going to look a lot different next year.
I expect it to, and I hope it will. Well, we're going to be right back. We're going to take a quick break. Those on the YouTube side are watching live. Don't go anywhere. We're just going to be a quick pause. But for those that are listening on the audio only side, we'll be back after this short break. Welcome back to the Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Shannon White. We're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, their future moves, what's currently going on. But before we get back into the conversation, Shannon, I'm sure you have a stock up, stock down report coming out. What do you got going on this week on the website, SteelCurtainNetwork.com?
Well, actually, my Steelers stock report come out today.
Oh, nice.
Because it's always 2 days after the game. So with it being a Saturday game, it posted today. And, there was really no Steelers stock up right now, to be honest with you. The article was basically talking about a lot of the things that we've been talking about here, about how that it's every level. The Steelers, before Dan Rooney, were a laughingstock. Dan Rooney comes in and they become the greatest franchise in NFL history. Since Mr. Dan Rooney passed away in 2017, they're getting back. They're trending towards laughingstock again. They have to. Art the second's going to have to step up and take control of this situation. He's leaned too long on Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin, and you have to keep guys in check because sometimes it's hard to do self-evaluations. Anytime you're in a business, even, and you have your colleagues and people that work for you, work under you, your personal feelings sometimes become involved and cloud your judgment on whether this person is qualified for this position. And I think that happens to the best of us. And I think it's happened to Colbert and to Tomlin. Well, Colbert's moved on, And we've got, we've really upgraded there, in my opinion. I don't know if Tomlin is going to move on his own and say he's quitting at the end of the year, or if he'll play out the rest of his contract. But I do not see an extension coming. We'll see. Been wrong before, but I just don't see it happening. So I think we're going to see a new front office. We're going to see a new coaching staff, and we're going to see a whole new roster next year, like we just talked about. So it's going to be different. And I know I keep seeing people say on Twitter, Steelers fans can't handle it when they were 6-3. How are they going to handle a rebuilding year or two? Listen, I wasn't happy at 6-3. I admit that, because they were getting lucky. There wasn't showing sustainable improvement. That's what I want to see. I can handle growing pains as long as I see growth, right?
Yeah.
Growing pains, you got to see growth.
We
haven't seen any growth in forever. Like you said, just pain. The joke, Tomlin's going to unleash hell in December, but it was on us. We're the ones going through it. You know what I mean? So we can laugh about it now, guys, because I'm past the point of sadness. I'm past being pissed off. It is what it is. I've accepted it. Kind of like in 2019. The pressure was off. We had no expectations. So they give us a fun ride. We thought they might make the playoffs. They didn't. But it was fun for a while. The Duck Hodges story and that's why we're going to have to look at it. And if they come back next year with all the changes and everything, it's going to take time. But we just got to see that growth and that improvement.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just been a lot of pain, a lot of pain, And I was thinking about it earlier today, and I was looking at Tomlin's record and his postseason record, in the last few years. And I'll be honest, it seems like the Steelers have turned into the Marvin Lewis Cincinnati Bengals, where they were consistently mediocre, can't win the big game, can't go anywhere in the playoffs when they make it, and constantly on the outside looking in. That's what I see with this team, and it can't be that. It can't be that. We need to, in my opinion, move forward from that. But looking at this game here, Mason Rudolph's going to start. He throws up 2 TDs, 225 yards. You think he earns the start the following week, or do you think that once Kenny Pickett is healthy, he's going back in?
Well, I'll be honest. It would not shock me if Saturday morning, Kenny Pickett, I'm playing. Don't know if that's a good idea or not, but it wouldn't shock me. I'm just going to say that. I think he doesn't need to play. I think Rudolph deserves it. Let him play. If he could get 2 touchdowns out of this offense, 2 touchdown passes, say 225, 250, and plays well, I think you'd have to give him a chance the next week. I think he would earn that. And, at this point in the season, the odds of making the playoffs are long. But you want something positive to build on, something to make you feel good going into next year. Because right now, what does anybody feel good about? There is nothing. So, yeah, I think if Mason comes out and has a good game and pulls out a win, I think you stick with him.
What if it's a loss? He has a good game. It's not his fault. The defense is completely shattered. The middle linebacker, safeties, it's not good. So, he puts up a competitive performance, something that we haven't seen really from the other quarterbacks this year, except for a handful of times. Would you still consider starting him? Or at that point, it's, let's see what if Pickett can turn it around.
In my opinion, if he can get a spark out of this offense, because you know how I feel about this offense. Right. If Rudolph could get a spark out of this offense, he's a miracle worker. Because Pickett can't, and Trubisky sure can't. So I would stick with Rudolph. Even if they lose and it's a close game, if they got to have some offense to be competitive. Because as you say, the defense is a wreck. So if Rudolph can move the ball and get something out of this, The other two guys have already proven they can't. And I want to see a new offense, but that'll be next year. So
Yeah.
I would still stick with him.
Yeah, I would too. And, if he does perform well and he can put up some points and things like that, I think he can be the cheap veteran that you can utilize next year as well. A guy that's been in the system for a while, even if you're going to go back to Pickett or go a different route. I think he could be one of the veterans there. I don't know if he's going to be the only. I think you still bring in somebody.
Yeah.
But, if you're bringing in a big name like a Justin Fields, which I'm not sure how much the Steelers are going to like bringing in a number one first round quarterback from Chicago again. But if they do, they go down that route again, I think he's going to want the opportunity to start and be given a fair chance to start. Like, let's be honest, this past season, that wasn't an open competition. Last season, it wasn't an open competition. My bad. It was Trubisky's job until it wasn't, and then it was Kenny Pickett. There was no other talking about it. Mason Rudolph, in my opinion, probably had one of the better camps, but it was expected because he had, the history there. The expectation of the other two quarterbacks was that they were going to surpass him once they, got comfortable in the offense. To be honest, I never saw that happen especially with Mitch. We'll see with Pickett. But I think the same thing. If he ends up doing well and he creates a spark, I think you continue to play him. As far as Pickett goes playing this weekend, I mean, it's a home game. I honestly don't think you roll him out there if he's hindered with the leg, because I think it's going to affect his performance. His performance hasn't been great as it is. Coming off of not playing for a couple of weeks, being rusty. I don't know. The Boo Birds would be out if he struggled very quickly. Mason chance might even happen again. I don't think you roll with that. I think you wait until the following week, regardless of what happens, and let Mason go out there and sling it and see what happens. So
I agree with you. My thing is, I think that Pickett realizes he looks at this as his offense, his team, not his offense scheme. But, these are his guys, and he wants to solidify himself. That's why I think he had the surgery, trying to hope the Steelers would win, stay in playoff contention, and he can come back and help get them there. He's a team-first guy. Like I said, I don't see any quarterback being very successful in this offense. There's too many limitations just into the play calls and the play designs. It could be operated better, definitely. Execution could have been better all year, but it's still limiting just the play design and the plays themselves. But I think that Pickett in his mind has been pushing to come back this week, and it's the last home game of the season. And then they play in Seattle and then they play in Baltimore. It's his last opportunity to make an impression. A positive impression, because it didn't end when he got hurt. It wasn't a good positive impression. So I'm afraid he's going to try to push it. And I think if he comes out and says, "Hey, coach, I can play," I think that's what Tomlin mentioned it after he said Rudolph's a starter, but the door's slightly ajar for Pickett. I think that he would let him do it. Well, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but I think that might happen. But I'm like you. I'd like to see Rudolph, based on what is left to play for this season, let him see what he can do, and hopefully get some better results. Because, man, I've never heard so much booing and in Pittsburgh in my life. I mean, it's already tough to watch for all of us. But to hear the home crowd booing them and that's not what we're used to, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a frustrating feeling, that's for sure.
Oh,
now you mentioned, you don't believe that anybody could, or any quarterback, especially one on this team, is going to come in here and turn the ship around offensively this year with this offensive scheme and game plan. I think that the players have something to do with it as well. Jamie brought up a quote. I'm not going to bring it up because there's some choice words there, but he stated something to the effect that everybody's complaining about Dan Moore, while Broderick Jones has been terrible. In this past game, this wasn't a great game for Broderick Jones.
Nope.
I think he needs to be on the left side. There was an interview not too long ago with Kevin Dotson, with the Los Angeles Rams, about to be all pro guard. He was having a conversation, and he stated that one of the things that really turned his play around was moving him back to the right side in Los Angeles. That he felt more comfortable there. That was the play that's where he had been his entire collegiate career.
Yep.
And the Steelers tried to force him into being a left guard, and it wasn't as natural as he thought it was going to be. And he didn't realize it till he went back to the right side, and how everything just kind of fell into place. I feel the Steelers have done that with a lot of players, especially on the line. Playing them out of position, put them on one side or the other. Do you think that Jones needs to be on the left side to have to be successful?
They are doing the exact same thing to Broderick Jones that they did to Kevin Dotson.
Yeah.
I look back, I had 4 articles. I wrote the original article when DeCastro was out and Dotson filled in multiple games, and him and Corafor, who was the right tackle, they made a great right side of the line, and the Steelers were really successful. And Dotson looked like a steal. And then, like you said, DeCastro come back, and he hadn't been playing well, and they moved Dotson out, put him as a backup, and DeCastro never played up to the level that Dotson did. Mm-hmm. So the next year they put Dotson as the starting left guard, and like he said, and he'd always been a right guard and played the right side. Well, it's not that easy for some guys to make that switch. Everything's opposite. And Dotson never was the same player. And I wrote 3 articles about, they need to move him back. They need to move him back. After DeCastro retired or was whatever happened there. And so now you got Broderick Jones. He looked really good because he's so athletic. And teams didn't know what to expect in his first game at right tackle. But each game since then, he's looking worse. And he's getting beat on simple moves because he's struggling making that change. And the man has to be on the left side. He is a left tackle. They need to move. Next year, he's going to be the starting left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
But this year, Dan Moore has played awful. I mean, he's really had I'm disappointed because I thought he really changed his body and really worked and focused. And I thought he was going to be stronger, anchor better. He gets pushed right back into the quarterback every time. I mean, you watch no line that I've watched this year collapses into the quarterback as fast and as often as the Steelers. So now you got Dotson, who's getting pushed around. Samalu's playing with one shoulder. Mm-hmm. He does not look good either. And Daniels had his worst game as the Steelers last week. And his worst PFF rating ever in his career. So it was a shambles. That was a terrible display against the Colts. So I definitely think that Jones needs to be back on that left side. And that's what I'm saying. They're going to have to get more than just one more. If you can pick up a good right tackle, that kid Jones out of Ohio State that the Browns got, the Steelers didn't get him. He's a monster, but he's been effective for him. And so you don't have to get a first round right tackle. You can pick up a good right tackle second round, third round. So, but that offensive line's got to be redone this offseason.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. I think they do need to bring in a right tackle, whether it's in the draft, like you mentioned. You don't necessarily have to get a right tackle in the first round. Right tackles typically also don't demand the money that the left tackle does. So you can even go the route of free agency if you have one that's dependable and young enough. But, I was listening to, I want to say Ramon Foster, and he brought up the fact that, you have Mason Cole and you have James Daniels, 2 guys in the interior offensive line that were brought in. They weren't built, as a Pittsburgh Steeler. They weren't homegrown. And that could be one of the issues, is that you don't have a homegrown guy there that's in the leadership position or the leadership role. Now, maybe Broderick Jones can get there because he's a guy that the Steelers went up and moved up to go get in the draft. But he's a rookie right now, so I don't think it's his place yet. But I think he's going to end up being one of those guys. But I think the Steelers need a Marquise Pouncey type. When Marquise Pouncey was drafted, he came in and he solidified himself as the number one guy. He was the center. He replaced a Super Bowl winning center immediately. And, I felt that he also, from what I've heard, is he grasped the attention of the room and he became that leader. And I think that's who the Steelers need. They need a guy like Marquise Pouncey in the center that's going to be the leader and that can, back it up, not just off the field, but also on the field. And, they could have had that guy in Creed Humphrey, but they let him go.
Well, don't get me started. But I'll tell you, Daniel, that's where the scouting department comes in.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get a guy who has that personality. You got to have an alpha personality. I don't know if the Steelers have one on that offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I watch them. Samalu took the lead from Kelsey with the Eagles and with Landon Dickerson and, Lane Johnson. I mean, but you see him, he's not an assertive, vocal guy. He's not. Well, we know Dan Moore's not. James Daniels isn't. Cole is a good communicator, but definitely not an alpha personality. And forget Okorafor, he's very passive. As you say, they need that guy to build around. If he can be a center, that's perfect. And there's 3 really good ones coming out. Well, actually 4. So I want to see the Steelers get one of them guys.
Yeah, me too. I mean, Mason Cole has just been – it's been a horrible year for him.
Yeah.
This entire year, whether it's injuries or something else, I don't know. But it's been one horrible year, and I think the Steelers need a guy in the middle there to really bring it up. I think that'll help out this team tremendously. I mean, just alone in the running game, establishing some sort of identity. It's probably one of the biggest needs on the offensive side of the ball when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Defensively, though, real quick, you got TJ Watt, who's getting up there in age. Alex, who was making a lot of money as well. TJ's going to be 30 next year. He's had a couple of injuries. Then you have Cam Hayward, he's getting paid, got a big check coming up too as well. Minkah Fitzpatrick, he's been dealing with some injuries. He got paid. Do you think that the Steelers are going to make some moves there with some of these big wallet guys on the defensive side?
In my opinion, I think they have to.
I do too.
I mean, somebody told me, now I can't confirm it because I haven't seen it, but that Hayward's $22 million next year.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Insane. I mean, there's no way. I don't even think you can have in that. So he's got to make a decision. I love Cam Hayward. I'd like to see him win a Super Bowl, but I don't think it's going to happen here. So maybe he wants to, hey, trade me to, I'd like to see him have that. That's the only thing missing off his resume. I kind of questioned about TJ Watt back when they did it. That's the kind of move that you knew Ben was nearing the end. If you pay Watt, you're going to have the highest paid defense in the NFL because they're already paying Hayward. And I said, it might be consider trading if you can get the top pick in the draft and get your future quarterback to set for a year behind Ben. And everybody said that was crazy. That's the kind of move that the Patriots would have made. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of move that the LA Rams made. You got to be aggressive when you see an opportunity. Because if you pay Watt to be the highest paid defensive player in the NFL, then you need him to lead you to a Super Bowl. I mean, you need to have tons of success. And we haven't even won a playoff game. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The way this money is spread out, there's so much on defense that they're going to have to cut here and there. And I love Alex Highsmith, but what would he get you in a trade? A team desperate for a pass rush and an edge rusher. And you're going to have to build younger and cheaper. Rebuilding teams do that. Rebuilding teams do not have the highest paid anything. Unless it's quarterback. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I just think that they're terribly top heavy on defense when it comes to salary. And they need more talent on both sides of the ball, not more high price talent. Yeah. And I just think that I agree totally that they're going to have to cut some salaries. Now, Minkah's just being used wrong this year. They're going to have to realize that because Minkah's worth every penny. That dude is the key to your defense right now. He was trying to hold everything together. But he is too talented and paid too much to be the junkyard dog.
You're right. You're right. You're absolutely right on that one. I think everybody can see that Minkah Fitzpatrick isn't used correctly, and that's why there's been a lack of splash plays from him. This defense has been subpar when it comes to positioning Minkah and putting him in favorable positions. They've utilized him all over the field to overcompensate for the other deficiencies that they've had on the defensive side, and that's limited his ability. And now, he's out probably for a couple of weeks, if not the rest of the season, depending on the injury. I'm sure they're probably waiting on some sort of MRI, but on the broadcast last night, it said it was an ankle. In the press conference today, they said it was a knee. I guess we can just best pray that it's something like MCL or nothing that's requiring surgery.
It looked like a knee, but
yeah. Because if it's an ACL this late in the season, that can affect next year.
Yep.
Yeah. So hopefully it's not something like that. Maybe one of those deals that need one of those microscopic surgeries that Benny Snell had a couple of years back, only took him out for 4 weeks. Hopefully it's something like that. But yeah, I think that, Cam Hayward, he's going to definitely need a pay cut or maybe, he's going to be 35 next year. It may be time for him to, to hang those cleats up. This year was a very injury riddled year. Now he's in the concussion protocol right now. Nobody knows when he got the concussion, but some speculate it may have happened after the Steelers called a timeout when they didn't need to at the end of the game. And yeah, I couldn't understand that either.
I could not. Yeah, I was like, "What are they doing?"
Yeah, just get out at that point.
Yeah, oh god.
And the Colts end up putting another field goal up and putting 30 on the Steelers. So it's gonna be it's gonna be bumpy. This last couple of games they might be bumpy as well, but there might be some light at the end of the tunnel. If the Steelers end up going 7-10, then that just means they're gonna have a pretty good draft, choice, and maybe perhaps a team changing choice. Do you got any final words, Shannon, before we let everybody go?
No, just it was an awesome show. Enjoyed the conversation, and I like that there's a lot of reality, a lot of truth being told right now. But I think that we're finally getting our mind wrapped around the situation, and we're there for each other. We can have these conversations and look at things optimistically. And not every time we say there's going to be a change, is it got to be something bad. It can be a change for good. And but for all of our Hangover audience and family and community, I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and making great memories of food, fun, and fellowship with your families.
100%. Merry Christmas, everybody. I'll be back on the audio side only on Friday, just before the game, previewing the upcoming game with the Cincinnati Bengals. Make sure you go check out the audio side. Shannon's going to be on with the Pump Your Brakes podcast airing live. You don't want to miss it. With that being said, Shannon, take us out.
Woo!
I pushed the button.
Ho, ho.